Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. It is Tuesday, March 28th, top of the hour, 4 p.m. Central Time. All three fellas hanging out with you this evening. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, CamLaw FFF, Tyler _Plath, and we're the main page FF Fellas, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. We got a great episode coming for you today.
Yes, sir.
Gonna do some Dynasty price checks on some big names in the Dynasty landscape. Some risers and fallers in terms of value. Should you be buying low on these guys? Should you be paying up to try and get these guys? All of that and more on today's episode. I'm not going to waste any more time because you two are going to have plenty of time to talk during this episode while I do a lot of the facilitating. So let's not waste people's time. Let's jump right into the Dynasty price checks. All right, so we have 7 names we're going to be going through today. We have 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end because, frankly, if you can get your hands on any tight end in Dynasty, that's good. If you get your hands on a tight end in fantasy football, that's good. Like, if they can put up points, that's good. So we're only going to talk about one tight end, and you can probably take a guess of who that tight end is. But let's start at the top. Let's start with the quarterback position. We are going to start with Justin Herbert. Quarterback, Los Angeles Chargers from 2022, second in pass attempts, second in passing yards, 4th in pace of play. Very favorable for the likes of a high caliber passing offense, 6th in air yards as well. But this is where it starts to take a little bit of a downturn for Justin Herbert here. His quarterback 15 in fantasy points per game last year. Not what you're expecting. In redraft, a guy who you're taking top 3 in Dynasty, a guy you were hoping was going to continue to be a top 3 quarterback. He's quarterback 26 in fantasy points per drop back, only 25 passing touchdowns last year as well. It was 8th best, but 25 is disappointing when your team is 4th in pace of play. You expect that team to be very high scoring and that to come at the hands of Justin Herbert. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to get both of your thoughts initially on the player that I mentioned. Then what we're going to do is I went ahead and used Keep Trade Cut. For those of you who don't know what Keep Trade Cut is, it is essentially probably the best Dynasty tool out there in terms of evaluating public value, public perception of players, and then you can balance that out in their trade calculator, figure out what trades are good and bad. It is not the perfect tool. I will get that out of the way right now. That being said, it might be the best Dynasty tool we have on the market right now, and it's 100% free for you to use as well. So I'm going to get your thoughts, and then I'm going to give you 5 players, and we're going to decide whether you would rather have the player that I first mentioned, in this case, Justin Herbert, or any of the 5 players I mentioned, hopefully get some trade ideas generating in the minds of our viewers, but maybe for ourselves too. Just a good, healthy exercise to put us through, and we're going to spend the next hour discussing a bunch of different players here. Sound good? So Justin Herbert, I went through him already. How are we feeling? What are we feeling pulse-wise on Justin Herbert after the 2022 season?
Let me just say, I love that we're calling this price checks just to get Ty behind this episode because we're just disguising a name doing this price checks. And Ty wouldn't have agreed to it if we did it a different way.
If we would have said the Dynasty name game episode, yep, Ty would have been out. He wouldn't be here right now.
Hats off to you, Lucas. Great wordplay. Well done. But yeah, I do have Justin Herbert in a super flex, and I think that's something we should I'll just throw out there real quick. We're talking about these in terms of super flex picks. So if you hear the 102 or something like that thrown out, that is what we're referring to. As for Justin Herbert, he's a guy I still believe in. We look at last year, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were on the field at the same time till week 13 or week 14, one of the two. So that's a huge hit to begin with. So that's something that's hopefully going to get better this season. He's probably going to lose Austin Eckler from what it sounds like. It sounds like Chargers have given him an opportunity to seek a trade. But I do believe that Herbert's going to kind of take a step back. You said 2nd in pass attempts, 2nd in passing yards, 4th in pace of play, 6th in air yards, right? Those are stats that are going to bring fantasy points. And so he just starts hitting a little bit more with wide receivers, and all of a sudden we kind of see him return back to kind of where we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, well, and Herbert himself wasn't healthy for the entire season too.
Yep.
So you take all those into consideration, and you're going to get a healthy Chargers squad going into next year. Yes, Eckler would hurt if he does leave, but it would advise me then if the Chargers use the 21st pick on a guy named Robinson. And just he's a really good player. But I think the biggest piece of this is that he's getting an upgrade at offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. That's big.
Mm-hmm.
Kellen Moore showed in Dallas that he wants to sling it around the field. That's exactly what the Chargers are looking to do. So if anything, I'm expecting a big bounce back from Herbert this year.
Yeah, I'm excited for Justin Herbert and Kellen Moore's offense specifically. I think we'll see those passing touchdowns go back up as well. I don't think we'll see it sit at 25. And Cameron, like you said, those passing attempts, passing yards, and the pace of play, like I don't expect that to change. Maybe the pace of play goes down a little bit, but I think Justin Herbert's productivity and efficiency goes up as well. So let's get into the price check element of this, though, because clearly we're all still in on Justin Herbert despite a down year. So by that logic, you should not be going out and trying to sell Justin Herbert for cheap. That being said, I think it's pretty clear who the top 3 quarterbacks are in dynasty leagues right now. I would say it is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts now that he is paid.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
You would have those 3 ahead of Justin Herbert. Let's start at Joe Burrow then. Would you rather have Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow?
I'm still going to leave Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Burrow's got the younger weapons.
I would agree with you all there. Joe Burrow was currently the quarterback 4, according to Keep Trade Cut. This is where we hit the break then. How about Justin Fields? Not paid, still a rookie. Not still a rookie, still young, still on his rookie contract. Lots of upside, though. They're helping him out this offseason with an offensive line, bringing in DJ Moore. Would you rather have Justin Fields, more rushing upside, or Justin Herbert, clearly more passing upside?
I think I'm going to go Herbert here. Just looking at Lamar Jackson, right? I think Lamar Jackson's a better passer, and I also think he's a better runner than Justin Fields, and yet we've only seen one season where Lamar's averaged over 22 points a game. So I don't think it's something that Fields is going to keep up. And I think to me, it feels like there's still a question mark if Fields is going to be a legitimate quarterback. I think not quarterback, starter for multiple years to come in this league. I think there's still a big question mark there.
I think we see some regression also from Fields in the rushing game, just because this offensive line is being rebuilt in front of him. They're bringing in new weapons. They clearly don't want to use Fields as much as they did last year in the run game. And because of that, I will lean Herbert on this one.
You could ask me tomorrow, and I might say Justin Fields. I think I'm going to stick with Justin Herbert today. I think there's still a chance Justin Fields falls on his face. I'm not going to put it past him. But man, his rushing upside could just lift him to quarterback 1 status alone.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna rely on what I've already seen from Justin Herbert and stick there. But this is why we do this, right? Because someone could offer you Justin Fields and an additional pick, additional player, and all of a sudden you're really considering this trade. You might not think of it off the top of your head, but if you have Justin Fields and you like Justin Herbert more, these are the kind of things you can start thinking about. But I'm going to lean Justin Herbert as well. How about Justin Herbert or Bijan Robinson? Superflex, keep in mind. Superflex.
I'm still going to go Herbert here. I think I would want more than just Bijan. I think just looking from a superflex position, right? If Herbert puts up 22, the odds of Bijan putting up, 22 a year, he might get 2 or 3 years of that, right? Just looking historically. Whereas Justin Herbert could do it for the next 6-7 years.
Yes.
So I think I'd lean Herbert in that way.
Yeah, don't get any ideas here, you two and anyone listening, but I'm going to say Herbert because I think the big asterisk is super flex. If this was a 1 quarterback league, it is Bijan hands down, but because it's super flex and you do need to kind of build up some quarterback talent, you got to go Herbert.
I am sending you Dak Prescott in the 105 for the 101 in our 1 quarterback league. I'm just kidding. I agree. You're getting. Oh, he's considering.
No.
Okay, now I have things to think about. All right. How about Trey Lance? No. How about I'm going Justin Herbert as well. Cameron, you touched on it. It's longevity. It is longevity. You're gonna get more years out of Justin Herbert than you are out of Bijan, and the quarterback position is going to outscore the running back position more times than not. That simple logic there. As much as I love Bijan, as much as I think he's the 101 in drafts this year, Justin Herbert's going to give you more points for a longer duration, and in a super flex, that's what matters. AJ Brown, Justin Herbert.
I'm still going to lean Herbert here. Just thinking if I was going to do a startup right now on Superflex, I think I'd take Herbert as the 5th quarterback. And I could see him, I think it'd be a tougher discussion for me between, I guess I won't say I don't know if you're bringing him up, but Justin Jefferson.
I'm not, but
Justin
I
Jefferson,
think he'll be the next
Chase.
name I bring up.
I think that they're more in that tier of Justin Herbert as far as Superflex than AJ Brown. Well, not taking anything away from AJ Brown, but they are in a different tier than he is.
Yeah, I would lean Herbert still on this one. I think if there wasn't, like you said, a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, I think maybe then it's a little bit closer. But with AJ Brown, like wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, and just kind of on the outside looking in a little bit, you got to go Herbert.
Yeah, and the next name I was going to bring up was CeeDee Lamb, who is technically the wide receiver 3 in Dynasty leagues right now, ahead of AJ Brown, who is the wide receiver 4. And I think we would all agree we'd still have Justin Herbert over CeeDee Lamb. So then does Justin Herbert break that tier of Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase for you, who are 1A and 1B in my mind?
That's a close one. I think this is the one. This is like the Fields for me. I could go either way on this one. It just is going to depend on how you want to build out your roster. If you're okay with having a little weak, because he's going to be a first round startup draft capital. So if you're okay with having a little bit weaker wide receivers and you would rather have the quarterback, then take Herbert. If you'd rather have everything else beefed up and then have a little bit lower quarterbacks, then you take Justin Jefferson. I think I lean Herbert slightly, and that might just be because I have Herbert in a super flex league.
Yeah, I'll say Herbert too, just because I think when you look at consistency in all that, and I look at Jamar Chase and I look at Justin Jefferson and just kind of their situations, Justin Jefferson may not have Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball after this year. That matters. And excuse me, for Jamar Chase, he will likely have Joe Burrow, but we've seen in the past, one game it could be Jamar Chase, the next it could be T. Higgins. Sometimes it's both, right? But again, for consistency's sake and just getting as many points as you can, quarterback is going to be the way to go. And that's why I stick with Herbert over those two.
Superflex is the name of the game. I'm going to take Herbert as well, but I think that is the tier break for me as well, like you said, Cameron, of that's when I do start looking at the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, but I'm going to give the edge to Herbert for now. All right, we're 13 minutes in already. We're going to have to keep things moving a little bit more quickly here, but let's move on to the next player on our list now. Hopefully that gave you a few ideas of what to do with Justin Herbert despite a down season. DeAndre Swift, running back of the Detroit Lions. This one's going to be fun. I'm excited for this one. I'm in pain secretly. I'm just covering up pain I've been burying down since the David Montgomery signing. Look, here's the thing about Swift. Okay, there's a lot of good. Running back 3 in fantasy points per opportunity last year. He was running back 2 the year prior in fantasy points per opportunity. Dude gets the ball in his hands. Dan Campbell has said he is one of the most explosive players on the football field who can make things happen. Why they don't just make him the guy infuriates me. But anyways, 5.5 yards per carry last year. He was 10th in targets, 11th in receptions, 6th in running back target share as well. But then look, 40 RB 42 in snap share, 51 in opportunity share, 43 in carries. Like all the things that you already know about DeAndre Swift. He's not getting a lot of rushing touches, but he's very, very efficient in the receiving game, and he can find the end zone as well at the tip of a hat, right? Your thoughts on DeAndre Swift with David Montgomery in town? Now, we've done some talk on David Montgomery already. Ty and I have when we were recapping free agency. Give me your quick thoughts here on DeAndre Swift in a new era with David Montgomery in town instead of Javonte Williams.
I think his ceiling is Tony Pollard last year with Ezekiel Elliott, and I think his floor is going to feel like J.D. McKissic. I think this signing really brings in a low floor, and I think it's kind of the Lions' way of saying, hey, you're not going to be our 1A ever. We can have you be that 1B guy where, fantasy-wise, you score a lot. Right, I still think he has a great ceiling, but he definitely makes me a lot more nervous than he has in past.
I feel like Monty's just going to steal touchdowns from him, and that's going to hurt him in the long run. And sure, maybe there's receiving work for him, but like you said, this Montgomery signing is the clear indication from the Lions that they are never going to really give him the opportunity that us fantasy managers think he deserves.
Mhm.
So it's it hurts the stock, because when Lucas and I talked about it, we said, like I said, at least somewhere between like running back 2024 for me. That's where I would want to draft him from. But knowing that the floor could be even lower than that, and the ceiling may not be as high as it once was.
Mhm.
Curse you, Dan Campbell. I can't help but still want to be in on DeAndre. Like, I kid you not, my internal dialogue, I every time I look at DeAndre Swift, I think it's not worth investing. And then I go full circle, because I'm like, you know what? All he needs is 8 touches, and he could score 15 fantasy points if he wanted to on a given week.
Mhm.
So let's get into a little bit of a price check then, because DeAndre Swift, I think there are going to be a lot of different opinions on. You're still going to have your Swifties out there, your DeAndre Swift truthers like yours truly. I still believe in him. I want to believe talent wins out, because that dude is so insanely talented. Let's get into a little bit of a price check then. Instead of 5 names, we'll cut it down to 3 for the sake of time. But here's the first name I want to throw out there. Similar situation. Roles are slightly flipped. Dameon Pierce or DeAndre Swift?
I'm still going to take Swift in this one. I think Swift just has a higher ceiling. That's where I'd rather shoot. And I think Swift's still going to get receptions, which I think allows him that floor. We saw with Dameon Pierce last year that he doesn't have that same floor. And especially with Houston could definitely be in a lot of shootouts this year, or not shootouts, but come from behind games. You know, they're down 28-3. And so where Pierce just doesn't touch the ball the same amount. So I think I'm going to lean Swift over Pierce.
I'm going to lean Swift too. Lucas said it best however many episodes ago it was, but when Dameon Pierce got 20 or more touches, he was excellent. Less than that, he cut his fantasy points in half. Like,
that's dramatic.
That's bad. That's really, really bad. And I know a lot of people will say, well, this is Devin Singletary. So, like, what exactly does Singletary, offer as a threat, you could say, to Pierce? Enough of a receiving threat to take away any chance of that from Pierce. And like you said, this team is still not good enough to really be in a lot of football games. So they're going to be playing from behind a lot. Swift has receiving upside. The Lions will be in almost every single game that they're playing in, if not like winning most of them. I like Swift.
The other thing you hear about Dameon Pierce, when you bring up the touches argument in terms of like, 20 less touches, it's like, oh, well, no, duh. When he doesn't touch the ball as much, he's not going to score as much. Yeah, but you do realize, like, from 16.8 fantasy points to 8.3 fantasy points, that's it shouldn't be that dramatic. Yep. It should not be that dramatic. And there's no correlation to when he was getting touches and when he wasn't last year. Like, the first 2 weeks, sure, you can say like, okay, he was getting used to the NFL. Then you look at that, there's no correlation to when he got more touches and as to when he didn't. And like you said, Cameron, this team's still going to be playing from behind next year. Like, they're not going to fix this defense in a single offseason.
No.
Especially with the lack of continuity they have in their coach's room. So I 100% agree. I'm taking Swift. I'm going to take the guy who's going to give me a receiving upside. If it's this much of a crapshoot with Dameon Pierce, I'll take the guy who has receiving upside. Next name, Marquise Brown.
Ooh.
Or DeAndre Swift.
I really like Marquise Brown. I think he can be a borderline top 15 wide receiver. Obviously, next year might be a little rocky to start with Kyler being out, but if he is the number 1 or even number 2 in Arizona, I think he can still succeed with Kyler. So I'm going to take Marquise Brown, and I think it's something too we've mentioned before. Wide receivers are just safer in Dynasty, right? Hollywood Brown's only like 25, 26.
25.
So we're looking at 5 or 6 years left of high-end performance. Swift's, I think, 24 right now. So maybe 3 or 4 years left. So I think, to me, that makes me want to lean Marquise Brown.
I will go Marquise Brown, but the idea that Swift could potentially be kind of a trade deadline piece this year is something that is, I don't think, talked about enough. So I mean, in the scenario that Swift gets traded, then we could look back on this and be like, that was really bad of us to say Marquise Brown. But the way that things stand right now, you do have to go Marquise Brown.
D-Hop's going to leave town.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Arizona brings him back.
No.
Like they've officially given him permission to go explore trade options. So I don't think he's coming back. Give him the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. I mean, I wouldn't hate that. New England.
It would give them no more excuses to not win a championship.
That's true.
That's true. Very true. I will go Marquise Brown here as well because I think he will be the one in that offense this upcoming season, and Swift won't be. Math is math there. Let's just let the math speak. One is going to be a number one in their offense. One is going to be a number 3 in their offense.
Yeah.
Depending on how the lines shake out. But yeah, I will take Marquise Brown. As much as I love DeAndre Swift, I think I like Hollywood that much more.
Mm-hmm.
Last name I want to bring up. This one was interesting when I looked on Keep Trade Cut, and this is an interesting conversation, and we can do a little bit of speculation here. Zach Charbonnet. DeAndre Swift or Zach Charbonnet, rookie from UCLA. And this is ideally probably in a super flex league going to be like a late first round pick.
Ty, I'll let you touch on this one first.
I think, man, when I watch Charbonnet's film, it looks exactly like James Conner. It looks exactly like it. Maybe Charbonnet has a little bit better hands than Conner did coming out. But when you're talking about a rookie, you have to talk about the situation that they could possibly go into.
Yep.
And there are not many teams, if at all at this point, that are specifically waiting for a running back to come in and take over the workload. Like they've already got someone in. So that argument of like, well, Charbonnet could take the full workload is out the window. I'm going to lean with a guy that can possibly just step right in, kind of in a Brian Robinson role, maybe, except where it's just a lot of goal line stuff. And I like that potential with Charbonnet, so I could lean Charbonnet, but I think this is one of those, you could ask me tomorrow, and I will say DeAndre Swift. But right now, my answer is Zach Charbonnet.
I agree with what you're saying though about I don't know if Charbonnet can step right into any backfield right now. So without knowing where he's going to land, I'm going to lean Swift just slightly. Just knowing if Swift is a backup or the 1B the rest of his career, like Lucas is saying, 8 touches and he could be, really good for a team. So I'm going to lean Swift just in that way. I think Charbonnet could be dependent on where he ends up landing, whereas I think Swift can kind of flourish anywhere he is.
One other thing too, I like how Lucas purposely chose 2 other guys that are currently behind Swift in rankings just to make himself feel better about his Swift fandom. That's a little detail.
I mean, I just went with players in the general area. Damian Pierce is technically ahead of DeAndre Swift in rankings still. I keep trade cut.
Yikes.
So I went within the general area. Here's my take. If Zach Charbonnet ends up with the Atlanta Falcons, I will take Zach Charbonnet. If he ends up anywhere else, I'm probably going to lean Swift because you named it, Tyler. I think it's going to be very dependent on his landing spot. Very, very dependent.
Mm.
And I think Atlanta would be a great spot for him where he can come in. He doesn't have to take a 3-down workload, but that's an offense that could use a James Conner type player. Like I know Tyler Algier is there and everybody who's like, oh, Tyler Algier, he's the truth. He's not.
Okay? Yeah, not when he's a 5th-round rookie.
Right. He's just not the truth. Okay. I hate to break it to you. They can bring in Zach Charbonnet, and I think Arthur Smith will use him to no end in that offense. So, if Charbonnet finds the right spot, I would take Charbonnet. But Cameron, I'm with you. Until I know where he lands, I'm gonna stick with Swift. Hopefully that gets some wheels churning for you in your Dynasty leagues or Devy leagues. Let's move it on here. Drake London, speaking of the Atlanta Falcons, is our next player up. Drake London's advanced stats. I need to say this. His stats are so misleading. His advanced stats are very misleading. You look at 5th in target share. Ooh. 2nd in target rate. Wide receiver 11 in yards per route run. That's actually a really good stat. Wide receiver 14 in fantasy points per route run. It's also very good. Here's the thing, though. He was wide receiver 22 in targets, 39 in snap share, 57 in routes run. 52nd in ADOT, 43 in fantasy points per game last year. Now, he's going into his sophomore year. We could see a sophomore leap, absolutely. But when I see 2nd in target rate and 22nd in targets and 57th in routes run, that's telling me Arthur Smith still wants to run the crap out of the football, and they have not done anything to address the quarterback position. And look, I know Desmond Ridder came in and he looked all right at the tail end of last season. Look, I don't think Desmond Ridder's the truth. Okay. I'm going to, like, people, it's the Sam Howell thing, right? People are like, oh, Sam Howell. Yes, he's finally getting his shot. Oh, Desmond Ridder. Like, he actually might get his shot, but, like, let's not act like Desmond Ridder is going to make Drake London a top 15 wide receiver this year.
No, I agree. I think.
Go ahead. Yeah, give me your quick thoughts on London.
I really like London, but I do agree that the situation is not great. I think it's a lot like Kyle Pitts of great athletes, could be great pass catchers, but you're going to have Desmond Ridder probably again this year. Should be Lamar Jackson, but you're probably going to have Desmond Ridder, and you're on a team where they want to run the ball. And so you got to hope that for touchdown upside, and you got to hope that the target share is just absolutely ridiculous once again, so that he can, take a step forward. They're saying that they think Desmond Ridder is going to take a step forward. I don't know if I believe it. So I like him as a dynasty asset, moving forward past this year, but this year might be a little bit shaky.
Just from a schematic standpoint, the Falcons are the most confusing team to me. You have a huge wide receiver in Drake London, who I would say is, just because of his size, going to be one of the most important pieces to the offense because he can run block. He's got size to go get 50-50 balls. He's going to be he's an important piece of that offense. But then you have Kyle Pitts. Beyond me why they keep putting him on the line. Kyle Pitts is not that kind of tight end. He's a receiving threat tight end that you need to stand up. You need to put him in the slot. You need to put him in the short slot. Like, it doesn't make sense what this offense is trying to do. That being said, let's dive into the hypothetical that Lamar does go to Atlanta, Atlanta does like a complete 180. Drake London instantly becomes a much better prospect, I'll call it, just, from a fantasy perspective. The other thing too, the Falcons need another wide receiver opposite London. And I know I just talked about Kyle Pitts, but Olamide Zaccheaus is not the best counterpart to Drake London. So if you bring in another receiver, and I'm not saying they're going to take one in the first round, rounds 2 or 3, they do maybe. Just get attention off of Drake London, because teams are not intimidated by putting a safety on Kyle Pitts, and they're not intimidated to just completely take away one side of the field with Drake London, because that's all they got. That's all they got. So until they add more weapons and the picture becomes a little more clear of what this offense really wants to do besides just running the ball, I have a hard time kind of believing in Drake London.
Yep.
I think Drake London's a great dynasty asset. He's young. He has all the upside in the world. It's just tough to see the immediate future for him, which is why we're going to talk about a price check here, because you have to figure out, you have to play the long game with him, but the short-term future doesn't look great. So do you capitalize on his youth now, or do you wait for this to try and develop? That's kind of why we're asking this question here. You're like, Drake London, well, duh, he's a young sophomore wide receiver. He has all the upside in the world. Yeah, but the immediate future doesn't look great for him.
Yep.
So let's start with this. Superflex League, would you rather have Bryce Young or Drake London? So essentially the 102 or Drake London.
That is a really good one. I I don't like that one at all. Man, I feel like I should say Bryce Young, but I am kind of falling into the Drake London trap, I will admit. From a I enjoy watching his tape. I think he's a very talented wide receiver, and I think he's going to be really good. And if Bryce Young ends up on the Texans, man,
Right.
I think I'm going to say Drake London, but I probably should say Bryce Young.
I will say Bryce Young only if the Texans are able to bring in JSN at 12 in the draft. That's the only way I'll say Bryce Young, because that gives him a target, right? Robert Woods is not a good enough target in my book. So if they bring in if they bring in a first round wide receiver, then I'll say Bryce Young, but I don't think they do, because they didn't do it last year. So I'm going to say London here too, but I'm in the same boat. I should be saying Bryce Young.
I think you can get a better quarterback than Bryce Young for Drake London. Is that like, am I allowed to say that? Is that crazy?
Are you saying that Bryce Young is not a generational quarterback?
I'm just saying I think you could shoot a little bit higher than the unknown, the mystery of Bryce Young. And not mystery, but again, we don't know where he's going to end up. We don't know how his skill is going to translate. We don't know if they're going to surround him with weapons. There's just unknown there. And I think there, as much as there's unknown and potential with Drake London, there's just more of that with Bryce Young. So I saw that and I said, holy crap, that's going in the episode, because that's an insanely good one. Let us know in the comments what you actually think, because I think this is actually closer than people may want to admit. I think some people are going to be like, oh, it's easy, Bryce Young. Which, again, if Superflex is the name of the game, I think that's the right choice. But you have to sit and really chew on that one.
Yep, definitely.
I just think you can get just a bit better, a bit more known commodity than Bryce Young.
Yep.
How about his teammate Kyle Pitts? Drake London or Kyle Pitts? Arguably, who could be the Dynasty tight end one. I believe is a Dynasty tight end one, according to Keep Trade Cut.
Oh, that's so gross.
Isn't it?
It's gross, but this one's easy for me just because I explained it. I'm going Drake London on this one. This offense can't use Kyle Pitts right. And sure, Pitts has talent, and that'll develop over time, and maybe we could see some growth into the offense. But there's no fit between Kyle Pitts and Atlanta. And I shouldn't say Atlanta. Arthur Smith and Kyle Pitts. That is not a fit that will, in my opinion, ever work. So I'm going to say London on this one.
I'm going to shock the world and go Kyle Pitts. I just think this season, right, I think it's going to feel kind of like a wash for both of them. Obviously, Pitts coming back from an ACL. London might have a decent season, right? I don't want to like take that out. Like London definitely could be a top 20, pushing top 15 wide receiver if he gets to the touchdowns and stuff like that. I don't think Pitts is going to be a top 3, top 4, probably even top 5 tight end this season, recovering from that ACL. But if we're looking forward, they're either going to have to change how they run this offense or move on from Kyle Pitts. And so I'm going to take the bet on there's nobody at the tight end position, and hopefully Kyle Pitts is put in a situation moving forward where he can't succeed. So I'm going to lean Pitts in this one, but I do think it's very close.
And that is the only reason why I'm going to take Kyle Pitts, is because there is nobody else like him at the tight end position, and it has to work at some point in his career. I know I said you should go sell Kyle Pitts, but this is the kind of thing where I think you can sell Kyle Pitts for Drake London plus. Like, I would rather have Kyle Pitts, but if you can get Drake London plus out of Kyle Pitts, a heartbeat, yes. But if we're talking 1-for-1, I would rather have Kyle Pitts, just because the tight end position is just so insanely thin, and I refuse to believe it won't work out, though I am more pessimistic about that than optimistic.
Yep.
Other names that popped up, I just want to list this. Saquon Barkley is below Drake London. I would trade Drake London for Saquon Barkley in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
we don't have to discuss that. I think we all agree. I found that absolutely disrespectful to Saquon Barkley. Here's what we'll do. Drake London or DK Metcalf.
DK Metcalf, but that's because I'm a DK Metcalf stan. I have found over the last year. But boy, I think Drake London, Actually, I do think Drake London's ceiling probably is going to be DK Metcalf without Tyler Lockett. So I'm gonna go DK Metcalf.
Oh, I don't like this. I will say, I'll say DK just because I know what I'm getting.
If I'm gonna go out and win a chip, I'm trading Drake London for DK ASAP.
Yep.
I don't think that's a trade you have to go out and make if you're rebuilding. I think I'd rather sit and see with Drake London if you're rebuilding. But if you're gonna go out and win and you have Drake London on your team, go get DK Metcalf. I think you can make that trade happen. Straight swap.
Yeah. Because I agree. If you're rebuilding, I'd wait a year because unless DK Metcalf is a top 3 fantasy wide receiver this season, his value is not changing. If anything, it could go down because people are like, oh, he's only been top 10 one time. Whereas, like you're saying, Drake London finishes top 15. All of a sudden, we're talking, you get him a quarterback next year. Maybe he's top 10. Could be a similar value. So I think I would sit on it if I was rebuilding. But like you said, this year, if I'm going for the chip, I'm trading Drake London to get DK Metcalf.
Well, there you have it. We've discussed Justin Herbert, DeAndre Swift, Drake London, and a whole bunch of names to go with those players. Let's take a quick break here to hear from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, and we'll jump in with the rest of our Dynasty price checks. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we're back. We will have to go fairly quick here if we want to get through the rest of these guys here. But let's start with, look, the best tight end in fantasy football, arguably the NFL, Travis Kelce. He is probably one of the most, I can't even think of an adjective to put in there. Just one of the most polarizing dynasty assets right now, right? Because he incredible. Top 3 metric across the board. Pick a metric, Travis Kelce was top 3 amongst tight ends. 33 and a half years old, though. So at some point, it has to start going downhill. At some point, the magic has to run out. When do you want to jump out on Travis Kelce? When do you want to be done? It's like Tom Brady. When is Tom Brady going to stop having top 5 quarterback seasons? And like we saw this past year, it just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
So in super flex leagues, would you rather have Travis Kelce or Dak Prescott?
Oh, gosh. See, so you were just talking about it. Every single one, I'm going to be like, why would you ask that? That sucks. Because like you said, he's like the 104 right now in best ball drafts, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just, he's going insanely high, but like you said, there is no one like Travis Kelce right now. The positional advantage is insane. And with that being said, I don't want to make a choice. If I should go, I think I'm going to go Dak Prescott. I think Dak's good enough to average over 20 points a game. So I'm going to go Dak. Kelce.
Lucas, do you have like the other quarterbacks that are like just behind Dak Prescott by chance?
Not on hand, but if you talk for like 2 seconds, I can pull them up.
So what I'm essentially going to ask Lucas to find is there a big enough tier gap between Dak Prescott and like the next quarterback or next handful of quarterbacks? Because if that's the case, I would go Kelce. But if Dak is just at the bottom of one tier and there's a clear jump down after Dak, I would say Dak. So it really, really depends.
All right, here's what you have. So you have Dak Prescott. the next quarterback who is immediately after Travis Kelce, Anthony Richardson. I assume we would all rather have Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just too much unknown with Anthony Richardson. You could trade Travis Kelce for a player who's not even in the league in 2 years.
Yeah.
Tua Tagovailoa,
Taking Kelce.
Yeah, Kelce.
Daniel Jones.
I would rather have Kelce than Daniel Jones, to be honest.
I think Daniel Jones is closer than Tua and Richardson, but I will still take Kelce.
I should rephrase. If I'm trying to win a championship for the next 2 years, I would take Kelce because of the positional advantage over those other two. If I'm rebuilding, I'm taking Tua and Daniel Jones every day of the week. I just think that obviously longevity. This could be it for Travis Kelce. We could see 2 more. We could see 3 more. I think maybe max. But it's a really tough. And for him, obviously, you have to be contending. I think we should just phrase everything of if you're rebuilding, you should not be touching Travis Kelce unless you're selling him. I don't think we have to say that, but I just want to throw that out there.
Hint. I will say I'll say Dak. I'll say Dak compared to in the Dak versus Kelce debate. I'll say Dak just because of the quarterbacks after that.
Yep.
I'm getting more of a positional unless if my quarterback is a Daniel Jones and I can potentially get an upgrade to Dak Prescott and stack those two together. Like I don't see why I still wouldn't take Travis Kelce. I will let that man carry my fantasy football team until the wheels fall off, and I will eat it afterwards. Yeah. That is fine. He gives me a positional advantage that nobody else in fantasy football has ever really possibly given you.
That's true.
And I think that's invaluable regardless if it's super flex or not. So like maybe to a fault, I will go ahead and ride the Travis Kelce train until if it goes off the rails. Maybe that's to a fault. I just don't know if I can do that. I just don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah.
I just don't. Don't. I'm debating who to go with next. Travis Kelce. I think Mark Andrews is a little too obvious because you're just going to take the youth while you still can. Youth. Anybody who's younger than Travis Kelce and has top 1 tight end upside in them, I think you're gonna take Stephon Diggs or Travis Kelce.
Travis Kelce. I don't think that one's close personally.
Interesting.
Right. We're looking at Diggs. You maybe get 4 years out of him. I'd rather have 2 years of Kelce than 4 years of Diggs. Just because, like you said, the positional advantage is just insane, right? Kelce's outscoring the next tight end by six fantasy points. The tight end 2. He's outscoring the tight end 8 or 9 by 15 fantasy points, it feels like a game. And it's not actually 15, it just feels like it. Whereas, Diggs is the wide receiver 5 or 6. They add in another wide receiver, you don't know how it's going to go. So I do think I'd take Kelce in this one.
Yeah, I go Kelce here too. Just again, it's the advantage, and that's really the only reason why.
I am 100% with you both on that. Last name I'm going to bring up, Cameron. You and I talked about it before the episode. Travis Kelce or the wide receiver 1 in this draft class, Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Wow.
We're talking opposite ends of the spectrum. We're talking 33-year-old to 21-year-old.
If I am a Travis Kelce away from a championship roster, I'm taking Travis Kelce. I just think sometimes in Dynasty we get so clouded of making sure you're set up for the future. But if Travis Kelce's that last piece to have, a championship roster, you got loaded wide receivers, running backs, you got to go all in. You got to take Kelce and kind of ride that to a championship, because I would rather have a championship than a decent team for, 6 years and not win a championship. So speaking as a Vikings fan.
Truth.
Oh, man. Again, it depends on the status of your team. If you are winning, go get Kelce. If you're rebuilding, I would say JSN. When you have guys like Daniel Jeremiah, Joel Klatt is someone that I really, really like too when it comes to draft time because he's seen these guys play before. When both of them agree that they could see Jackson Smith and Jigba as the receptions leader in the league within the first 2 years of his career, that is insane. That's insane. So if you're rebuilding, I would you gotta go. I shouldn't say you gotta go. I would lean JSN, but if you're winning and you want to win the whole thing, go get Kelce.
Yeah, I think I go JSN. Like, I mean, if your team is like just Travis Kelce away, like if you've got other holes and it's like, 75-80%, maybe, you know, I'm probably the third best team. I need a little bit of luck. I'd probably still go JSN.
Yeah,
I just think it's if you can lock it in to have just that bulletproof roster, then I go Kelce. Otherwise, I go JSN.
Yep.
Yeah, if Kelce makes your team invincible and you're waltzing your way to the championship, barring any injuries, I would 100% agree. But I like, I don't want to start calling people in draft classes automatically the next Justin Jefferson, the next Jamar Chase. But like, I'm also taking into account that both Ohio State wide receivers, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, when all three of those dudes were together, and both Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson said that JSN was the best wide receiver on that team. I'm sorry. I'm taking that to mean something. I'm not, again, not proclaiming that JSN is the next Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave even. But like those dudes look pretty dang good their first year in the league. You get JSN in the right offense, in the right system, on a team that's looking to potentially build around that position. If the Houston Texans don't take him at 12, I think there's only good landing spots for JSN then.
Yeah.
So I will take a chance there, but I'm with you. If I'm Travis Kelce away from literally mashing my league for the next 2 years, I will gladly give up JSN for that.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you're going Travis Kelce for like an 80% chance at another Amon-Ra.
Right.
And, you know, I'd probably take Amon-Ra over Travis Kelce at this point.
100%. I would as well. All right, let's keep it moving because we only have about 15 minutes left here and we have 3 names to cover. We're not going to cover them all, but let's talk about two of the more important names this offseason. Trey Lance, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Lots and lots of conversation around him recently. Look, if you didn't hear General Manager Lynch's words in Rappaport earlier this week about how he said Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold are all going to compete for that quarterback one job. But if it were today, it's Purdy's job to lose, essentially. Like that's the very summary wrap-up statement of what John Lynch was saying, and there was no mention of Trey Lance in that quote that he gave, other than they'll all compete.
Yeah,
but not a mention of Trey Lance actually being the starter right now, which is crazy to me. I've also seen arguments where Trey Lance's value is on the downswing, therefore you shouldn't be going and buying him. I've also seen other perspectives of, well, teams are going to come after Trey Lance now.
Yeah.
Minnesota Vikings, go get him. Therefore, you should be going and buying low while you can. So this is why, again, we're doing a price check here, right? We look at his one game last year. Look, 13 of 18 for 164 isn't impressive, but I see 13 rushing attempts, and I think all the upside in the world is there. Maybe not going to be quite as mobile with coming off of an ankle injury, but let's talk about him. Let's talk about Trey Lance because I think he is one of the most frustrating dynasty assets right now. So again, we're looking at a super flex league here. Would you rather have Trey Lance or his teammate Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah, we're going super flex. I'm going to go Trey Lance. I'm going to take that chance of having an elite quarterback. Right. I like Ayuk. I think he's very talented, but right now he is the fourth option in that offense, behind Kittle, Debo, and CMC. So I think I'd take the upside of Lance for Ayuk.
Can I say neither? I mean, I'll say Lance, but it really depends on if he gets traded, because if he's in San Francisco, I don't think we really see him take the field as much as we want him to, just because for whatever the reason is, everyone is obsessed with babyface Purdy. That's just what they. I don't know. I want to go on record and say if they don't start Trey Lance and they stick with Brock Purdy, it will be the downfall of that regime because you traded away ton of capital. You're losing out on cap space. I know it's a rookie contract still with a quarterback, but it would be the downfall. And I don't agree with the decision to go with Purdy. Sorry, if we're basing it off of the first 2 games that we saw last year, week 1 was in a monsoon in Chicago and 2 was when he got hurt. So I don't really know what else Trey Lance is supposed to do. He has not been given a fair shot. But in terms of just let's reel it back to fantasy. Between Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk, Cam, you said it best. Ayuk is the 4th option in that offense. So I'll say Lance and just bank on a potential trade somewhere else.
I think I'm going to swerve a little bit. If Ayuk is my wide receiver 4 on my team, I will go trade that for Trey Lance. If he's playing in my flex, though, I think I'd rather have Brandon Ayuk. I think he's just valuable enough of an asset where if Trey Lance, like there is a realistic possibility Trey Lance is not a starter in the NFL the next 2 years.
Yeah.
That is a realistic possibility. Brandon Ayuk will be. Like, I think Brandon Ayuk is just valuable enough where I'd rather hold on to him. But again, if he's not sniffing my starting lineup, if you're really deep at wide receiver, I would go do that then. I would go trade Brandon Ayuk for Trey Lance just to sweeten up the deal for somebody else. How about Jared Goff? Straight up for Trey Lance. Would you trade Jared Goff for Trey Lance straight up? I would.
Man. Trade Trey Lance and to get Jared Goff, you're saying? You would do it?
Jared Goff to get Trey Lance.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would as well. I mean, unless I need Goff, right? If I'm like quarterback dependent and I feel like the rest of my team is there ready to win a championship, I'd probably keep Goff. Just to prevent a chance of, hey, my quarterback 2 is not even starting this year. But I think long term, I'd rather take the chance on Trey Lance just because Jared Goff really isn't that special of a fantasy quarterback.
I think it depends on who you have behind Jared Goff. Like if you have, I don't know, let's say Derek Carr for whatever reason. Like let's say you have a top 10 quarterback as your QB1, and then you've got Jared Goff, and then you've got a Derek Carr. Then I would go make that trade because you got some insurance. But if you've really got no one else behind, I would be hesitant to, just because if that doesn't pay out, then you look very, very bad.
Yeah, I think you got to have some sort of insurance behind Goff. But I think I would. I think I'd be willing to take the chance on Trey Lance. I think there's enough quarterbacks who could do what Jared Goff provides you in fantasy. Jared Goff was irrelevant on road games. You couldn't start Jared Goff in a road game last year. He was just as good as Trey Lance at that point for your fantasy lineup. I mean, not quite, but like...
Pretty much.
I mean, when he's only throwing up 4 points on the road, you may as well start Kareem Hunt at that point last year, right? Like, That's how bad it was for Jared Goff. And I think there's enough quarterbacks who could do what Jared Goff does for your fantasy lineup that I would be willing to go do that and take the shot on Trey Lance. Albeit if you do have insurance to Jared Goff. Or if you have, again, crazy depth and you can, throw in a Brandon Ayuk at your super flex spot. If a Trey Lance doesn't pan out. Last one I'll throw out there. Some of the names around Trey Lance are just disgusting, and I don't think I'd trade any of them. Like Nick Chubb was in this range. I'm like, I would never trade Nick Chubb for Trey Lance. Not at all.
No.
They're in the same range, and that shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the other name I'll throw out, Chris Godwin.
Ooh.
I would keep Chris Godwin.
I think I'd keep Chris Godwin as well.
Yeah.
How about a late 2023 first? A late first this year. You're looking at Will Levis. Maybe. Otherwise, you're looking at probably Zach Charbonnet.
I think I'd take the first.
Yeah, I think I'd take the first also.
Yeah, I would capitalize if I could on the first as well. All right, let's move on to our last name here that we'll discuss. We were going to talk about Calvin Ridley because I think he is one of the most polarizing names out there. Here's what I'll say. and I think I speak for all of us. Calvin Ridley. Last time he played was in 2021.
Mhm.
And he didn't even play a full season. That dude has not played in a year and a half. I don't think he's a sunk dynasty asset. You're telling me at 28 years old, I'm supposed to go ahead and trust Calvin Ridley a year and a half off of football to just jump back in and make a dynamic fantasy impact. I don't buy it. He's a dynasty wide receiver 34 right now, according to Keep Trade Cut. I don't hate that ranking, but if you have high hopes for Calvin Ridley, I'm sorry. I think you have to bring those down.
Mhm.
Nobody takes a year and a half off of the NFL and comes back and looks like nothing changed for them.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson out of the league for a year. That dude looked lost. Looks like he had never played a down of NFL football before when he came back. And I think the older you get, it's not as easy to just come back and get into NFL shape. You can have been used to it before, but it takes time to adjust. It takes time to get back to game speed. I don't think you should have insane expectations for Calvin Ridley. I would not be a buyer of Calvin Ridley right now. There's some interesting names I wanted to bring up, but that will be my 2 cents on Calvin Ridley. Is I think I'm willing to skip out on him in our price check because I'm not willing to go buy Calvin Ridley right now.
I think he's a industry buy low. Everyone's saying to buy low, which means I think it's a good time to sell him.
Yes,
I've sold him everywhere. So if he's everyone's buy low, then he's not really a buy low, and I would go sell him.
Yes,
Just for everything Lucas said.
Last name we're going to talk about then is Javonte Williams. My beloved Javonte Williams. Believe it or not, he's still the running back 10. Keep Trade Cut, 52nd overall in Superflex leagues. That kind of surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we didn't see Javonte play much last year, and frankly, the advanced metrics weren't great while he was splitting with Melvin Gordon. But when you go back to 2021, 6th in yards created, 7th in yards created per touch, 8th in juke rate. He was 13th in both rushing yards and receptions. So there's a lot to like about Javonte's game. He was a running back 1 overall when he did get the backfield to himself. Now, keep in mind, Javonte Williams is coming off an ACL tear, and not just an ACL tear, but he has all sorts of ligament damage around that knee as well. He will likely be out going into next season. He will not be back right away by the sounds of it. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, he's only 22 years old. That's the other thing I keep getting stuck on is like, man, I'm ready to just kind of sell my Javonte shares, but he's 22, man. He's got a lot of time left in the league. So with that, here's where I'm going to start. 2 players who were out by the end of last season, Javonte Williams or Tony Pollard.
Ooh,
Tony Pollard.
I think I'm going to go Tony Pollard as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why? Give me your reasoning, because I think this one's super tough for me.
I think Tony Pollard, what we saw last year is I think what we're going to kind of get again from him this year. I know he had that ankle injury, but I think that, fracturing that ankle is a different kind of injury than tearing everything in your knee for a running back. I think it's a lot easier to come back from that. And just because we've already seen it from Tony Pollard, I think that kind of lends me to want that again.
The only way that I wouldn't go Pollard here is if Bijan Robinson ends up in Dallas.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That would complicate things a lot for Pollard. So yeah, again, like that would be the only way I go Javonte, but as things stand, Denver would be really, really, really dumb to not bring in another running back to share the load a little bit with Javonte. And like we just talked about a guy like Zach Charbonnet, I could definitely see him going to Denver because it's a Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray-esque running back tandem that Sean Payton used in New Orleans. So again, Javonte is likely going to get another running back that's going to eat into whatever workload he gets this year, which no one knows what that'll look like.
You mean Samaje Perine can't be out Alvin Kamara?
Dog. Cincinnati people are, yeah.
Hey, I like Samaje Perine. I thought that was a sneaky good signing.
It's neat. I think that, but that's the insurance signing that like they can't get one of these younger running backs as well. Samaje Perine can then fill in, but they're definitely still looking for another running back.
I think the Samaje Perine says that Denver is not going to look for a running back earlier than the 3rd round, and they'll see who falls into their lap in the 4th, 5th round of the draft.
Hmm.
That's my take. You know, they'll look at a guy, you know, like a Devon A-Chain. They'll look at a Sean Tucker. They'll look at a Tank Bixby.
Don't freaking say that.
Where do you want him to go?
To pivot for 30 seconds.
Start playing the Jeopardy music. Philly,
Really?
Kansas City, one of those two places.
Okay, Kansas City. Okay, yeah, Kansas City. There it is.
TD
I can get
upside.
on board with Kansas City. You lost me a little bit of Philly. I mean, I get why for Philly, but
Yeah.
everybody wants to go to Philly right now. It's starting to get too full there. Zeke might end up in Philly. I would go Pollard as well. 3 years though, man. Like Javonte could be 23 next year and turn into a top 10 back. He could. That's still in his range of outcomes. Is it though? Which is more likely, Javonte finishing in within the top 15 or outside of the top 25? And I think it's right in the middle, which is why that is what makes this so tough.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for next year, it's more likely he's outside top 25, just covering. But if you're talking years in the future, you got to think he's more likely to finish top 15, unless, I mean, the unless part comes from, you know, his knee just still isn't the same, because we've seen that before at running backs where they just can't come back from the injury.
Yeah, I think Tony Pollard is probably the ceiling of running backs of what you're going to get for Javonte.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get anything better than Tony Pollard. So let's move on to a different position then. How about DJ Moore, new in Chicago? I'm not going to say he takes an A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs lead. I've never been an advocate or proponent of that. I've just merely said the situations are similar, and we could see a statistical improvement for DJ Moore. I think it impacts Justin Fields more, but Javonte or DJ Moore?
I think I'm going to go DJ Moore. But man, you know, because DJ Moore could just stay the same, right? Even he was already the wide receiver one, wasn't fantastic. I think longevity wise, I think I'm going to take DJ Moore. But man, that's a really tough one. That's a really good one.
My question really is, what is DJ Moore's floor now that he's in Chicago?
His best finish in Carolina. I don't know about it. Okay, I shouldn't say his best finish. His best finish was wide receiver 24, was it not?
That should be double checked.
I think he was better than that. I think he was wide receiver 17 or 18.
I mean, we don't have to go in depth, but let's say his floor is wide receiver. His floor is wide
16.
receiver.
Yep.
16 was his highest. Okay.
Yep.
Wide receiver 24, 20. Okay, we'll split the difference between 25 and 30. Wide receiver 27 and a half. Wide receiver 28 is his floor.
I'd probably go Javonte then.
Interesting.
I don't know. I'm just for trying to wrap up the episode. I will say Javonte now. You can ask me tomorrow, and I'll say I could say DJ Moore.
I will say the thing with Javonte that would be nice is he could be a top 15 running back, which feel harder to come by than a wide receiver 2. Feels like there's 8 wide receiver 1s and 100 wide receiver 2s right now in fantasy football. So that would be the only reason I'd see kind of leaning Javonte if you want to take a chance if you need the running backs. But I still think I'm going to go DJ Moore.
I'm looking in the camera for this one. Nate, don't offer me DJ Moore for Javonte Williams in our Dynasty League. I'm going to take DJ Moore. Don't offer it to me because I'm not going to accept it because I'm like Ty. I think if I'm a Javonte manager, I want to hold out truth. But man, if I can flip him for DJ Moore, like I'm going to sit and think about that for a while.
I feel like if you're going to flip Javonte for a wide receiver, I feel like there's just a better wide receiver to go flip him for.
That's in a package to get somebody better. I agree.
Yes, definitely.
I agree. Last name, because it is super flex, Daniel Jones.
Oh,
Javonte. This one's easy for me. This is easy, Daniel Jones.
I think it is Daniel Jones.
Got the bag, super flex priority. I don't know what I'm going to get with Javonte. With Daniel Jones, I'm probably going to get a worthy super flex piece that's going to give me 15 every week. Give me that.
Yeah.
Hands down. I would go do that in a heartbeat in Superflex leagues right now.
Yeah,
I
I think
think- Go ahead.
I'd rather have all these Josh Allen than Javonte Williams in this one.
Yep.
That's people don't understand just kind of the quarterback whisper that is Brian Daboll. That has to be intriguing to whoever has or wants Daniel Jones. And I think that's the reason why you should lean Daniel Jones here over Javonte.
I think we're all in agreement there with Daniel Jones, the $40 million man. Can't believe I never thought I'd be saying those words. That wraps out our Dynasty price checks. Went a little bit over an hour, but fellas, anything we want to add before we wrap out the episode?
I just want to say Tyler started off the episode laughing because he sent me a trade request right when we started. And I didn't even have to look at my phone. I just saw that it lit up, and I knew that's exactly what happened. I still haven't. Or I guess I looked at it halfway.
You should
through
do,
and I saw that
I was going to
request.
say you should do a live reveal if you hadn't seen it already.
It's a terrible trade, so I'm going to decline it.
It's really not that bad, but
It's awful.
Keep in mind the state of your teams with these Dynasty price checks. Again, these are just merely to get some ideas generating. This is not the perfect guide in what trades you should be making. You have to keep the state of your team in mind, whether you're rebuilding, whether you're wide receiver needy, running back needy, quarterback needy in the Superflex league. Keep that in mind as you listen to this episode, or as you now are finished listening to this episode. This is not the perfect guide. Keep Trade Cut is not perfect, but it's one of the best tools we have, and it can get a lot of ideas generating. I have had hundreds of ideas generated from Keep Trade Cut in terms of trades, and it's actually led me to some really good negotiations in my league. So just a healthy exercise we want to do, and hopefully help you all, the listener, out as well, as you are navigating these off-season trades in Dynasty leagues, which are just inevitable because it's the best time to make these trades.
Yep.
So one more time, I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, CamLaw, FFF for Cameron, Tyler _Plath. We're at FF Fellas on Twitter, the main account, DFF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. If you're not subbed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. We're coming out with these podcasts every single week. Starting again in May, we're going to 2 episodes a week. Once we get to the start of the season, we're going to 3 episodes a week. In May as well, we're going to start pumping out 7 to 10 minute content as well. Like, we are making a big shift over to YouTube here. We're still going to post on TikTok. If you're here from TikTok, thank you so much for your loyalty over there. Just with the recent news of TikTok potentially being banned soon, we are really going to start diversifying our content. It does not mean we're putting TikTok on the back burner. We actually have really, really big plans for TikTok as well this offseason. But we just want to make sure we're diversified and ready to go if anything does happen. This was all in our plans anyway, so really, the strategy we're just ready to implement at this point. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I think that is all we have. 3 Stooges being dudes. Good to have both of you on tonight, fellas.
Yes,
It's a lot
sir.
of fun. We get all 3 of us on.
it's good
And
to
we
be
will
here.
we will see you all next week. While Cameron won't be here next week, he is going to be journeying Scotland next week. So, Mr. Lawrence, enjoy your belated honeymoon.
Will
And
do.
Tyler and I will be back with you next week to begin breaking down the rookie prospects of this year's class. We'll see you all next week. Deuces.
Deuces.
Deuces.